Okay, before we do anything, I'd like to introduce a new segment on Now Listening To, courtesy of the sun setting at 4:45 p.m. and me having a history of both regular and seasonal depression. Dun 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 dun! Vitamin D supplement taking time. Because I forgot to take it this morning. Bottoms up. Oh, I didn't realize how awful of a sound that would be. Here goes nothing. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Now Listening To podcast, hosted by yours truly, Allison Martin. If you'll notice, I'm not in my usual setup. I'm sitting on my bed today, which is gonna kind of set the theme for today's episode. I am just going to be doing an episode of honesty and vulnerability. I'm also going to tell a story time from like all the live music I've been seeing the past couple of months, specifically pertaining to when I went to a show in Seattle with Kana, who you guys were introduced to in last week's episode. Okay, we're back in business. I had to free up, sorry that my bed is creaking, I had to free up storage on my phone for the visual component, so shout out to all my visuals out there. So yeah, I'm just gonna level and be a human being in this episode, so maybe not strictly pertaining to music. If you guys cannot already tell, like I mentioned already, I'm not in my normal setup. It's gonna be photo booth, so it's gonna be my grainy Mac camera, but I guess it's better than nothing. Anyway, just without putting it off any longer, just gonna give you guys a clue in on kind of like where my life is generally, and how it kind of impacts my motivation and discipline to keep up with the podcast and also running the Now Listening To Instagram as well. Basically, let me turn up the brightness on my laptop. There we go. Basically, I had the idea to start Now Listening To and began preparations for it in February of 2024, so the beginning of this year. And I recorded the first episode of Now Listening To, I think, in April or May. And it kind of just sat in my phone, like in the files for a while, until I got around to editing it. And then it was just like a lot of, I don't know, I guess I didn't set up my expectations realistically for how much work, like, running a podcast is. Like, recording and editing and branding and advertising and content creation and pushing it on all these different forums. It, like, was so much work. It was so much work, and that's why the part of the reason why it didn't get published until August, and I recorded it in May. But also on that note, which I've touched on like multiple episodes of this pod, but I struggle a lot with my mental health. And in my current set of life circumstances, I've been having a really hard time. And I am not someone who really represses their emotions very much. I've been called overdramatic and sensitive my whole life because I allow myself to feel my emotions as they come. And I actually think it's one of my strengths, which, contrastingly enough, after I graduated school in London and I moved back to the US and started working at a 9-to-5 job that is an hour away from where I live, and at the time I also couldn't drive. Yeah, sorry. I just got a text from my brother. ADHD at your service. Yeah. My mental health kind of like took a rapid decline when we moved back, which I knew was gonna happen. Cause honest to God, I've talked to you guys about like the lifestyle I've lived and how I grew up, and I just really like felt like moving back to the suburbs where I went to middle school and everything, like, just feels like a huge step back. And DC is not the city that I want to end up in long term, because I don't think it will serve me in my career and also just my lifestyle. So yeah, that was a really hard adjustment, and I started shoving shit down, and like vaguely had a plan of like, oh well, I'll start applying for a new job at this time, because I realized just like the toll of commuting is massive, and the toll of going from college where you basically have independence to do whatever, like if you need to, you can skip class like a few times as you see fit, and you have a break. And like I didn't realize how much free time I was truly going to lose going into the typical 9 to 5 workforce in the US. And that's not to say, like, I am really lucky I got a job out of college, like, literally, like, 2 weeks after I graduated. Like, I'm lucky in that regard, but also, I don't feel like I need to undermine my own feelings about not being happy at this job just for the sake of, like, gratefulness. Like, obviously, I'm grateful that I make an income and I'm able to save money and start planning for my future if this is not what I want to do long term. But it's still tough. And as someone who already has pretty fragile mental health and doesn't have a strong support network of friends and doesn't thrive in the current like living situation that I'm in, and I moved back in with my parents and like everything like that, and obviously I love my parents and family, that goes without saying, but it is definitely a test of patience to go from like college, where I was just existing as my own human being and taking care of myself, and that was pretty much it, to moving back into my parents' house and adult expenses and like planning for the future and trying to be realistic and all of those things. So to circle back to how this is relevant to the podcast, my mental health tanked when I moved back to the US. I was finding it very hard to be motivated for like any reason, like for anything, even just basic things like exercising, so that I, am making up for the lack of serotonin I have with endorphins, and being social with people my age. I don't have a strong friendship network, but a few people here, and like those circumstances are constantly changing, or they have their own friend groups, or XYZ. And so yeah, it was just a lot of really big change happening all at once, but also feeling like I took a million setbacks. So, and like I was not even in touch with anything musical. I went to college for literature and writing. I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't reading. Like, I wasn't doing anything that I liked doing. I was doom scrolling and watching TV and like laying on my bed. And then especially like autumn, winter last year, it was a lot of like, oh well, the sun sets at 4:30 now, so as soon as I get home, I'm just gonna lay in my bed, and that's that. So yeah, my mental health tanked really, really bad when I first moved back. And then I saw Laura and Kana in Boston of February of this year, and Laura and Kana have always been like a really big source of motivation for me. And like, I am someone whose brain is going from like the moment that they wake up to the moment they go to bed. Like, I overthink everything and my brain is constantly going, and I am naturally very pessimistic by nature, so it's usually not so nice stuff that's going on in my head. But around Laura and Kana, everything just like makes sense. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Like, everything makes sense and my head goes quiet, and like I can see, like, they just make me feel like whatever I set out to achieve is totally within reach, and that like my future is bright still, and that it's not the end of the world. But I got into a very downward spiral, like existential crisis within my first couple of months working at my office job of just like, is this what the rest of my life looks like? And if so, peace out, basically. And just like something that has made me so upset over the past year, and like it's still kind of a problem now, is I've become like someone I'm not. Like, I'm so irritable and agitated all the time, and my relationships with people that like I thought would be like my best friends for the rest of my life have like drastically changed. And like, it's not all negative, but it's all just like, it's just so much stuff happening at once. And so anyway, that's where my headspace is at. And then I saw Laura and Kana in February, and this idea of starting a podcast had kind of been in the back of my mind because I can talk about everything and nothing for however long. And I was trying to find a segue back into music that wasn't directly like performing and producing right out the gate, because that felt too intimidating. But somehow starting a podcast didn't feel as intimidating. I don't really know what my train of thought was there. So yeah, they made me feel like it was a possibility. I published in August, and I went full steam ahead. I was really motivated, and there's people upstairs, so if you can hear people in the background, my bad. I was really, really motivated, and also, like, I've said this, like, I've mentioned him pretty much in every episode of this podcast, but, I found a small indie artist named Steven Dawes on Instagram, like, around a year ago now, and I've felt, like, this, like, strong sense of, like, connection to him. He just, I don't know, he made me feel like, honestly, like, I still have time to catch up. Like, if I want to do music, or if I want to do something creative, or I want to move to New York, or all of these, like, long-term goals of mine that, like, during my existential period, I had kind of convinced myself were pipe dreams, and that they were never going to happen, so I should just settle. At 21 years old, I should just settle. And I don't know, something about his music, it just, like, inspired the creative in me, and, like, awoke the dormant creative, because honestly, like, that's what I excel in. Like, even my degree, like, literature is creative, it's analytical, it's writing, it's expressing my opinion. And you know, when I was a kid, I was always doing skits or arts and crafts or singing songs. Like, I've always been super creative. So he was a big push, and he was doing like, it was his first headline show, but it was also like a release for his second EP in New York. And one of my goals when I turned 22, which was in June, was to be more spontaneous and to do things that served me for no explanation, really. And so that was like a big catalyst for the podcast. It was like, oh, well, I'm going to go to New York so I can get content then, and then I can do an episode on Steven. Because like I talked about in my Carol G and Selena video, there were 3 pillars that the podcast was founded on. And those 3 pillars are Laura and Kana, the 2 people in the world that make me feel like I can literally do anything. And like that they see so much more value in me that I don't see in myself sometimes. One of the pillars was Steven's debut EP, not AP, not advanced placement. His debut EP, like, I don't know, like, struck me, like, to my fucking soul. Like, something about it just, like, it felt eye-opening to me. So that, and then this time last year, I wanted to do a Carol G and Selena video essay, because it's something, I am a gigantic music nerd, and it's something that I'm, like, so interested in, and I don't have an outlet to discuss it. So yeah, all of those things were why I started the podcast, and I had a lot of steam in August and September, and I think it's just because it was so brand new. I was really proud of myself for actually following through, and I was, like, loving it. I was having a great time. It made me feel like I was using my time for myself again and for something that felt worthwhile to me. So yeah, that it was going well. But basically, yeah, the whole mental health component, which is the reason I'm bringing it up, is because it's been a big reason these past few weeks why I haven't kept up with the podcast as much. And part of the reason why I moved to the bi-weekly schedule that I also have been having a hard time keeping up with. But basically, I had told myself at the beginning of this year that I was going to start applying for other jobs in May, just kind of to propel myself to get to where I wanted to be. So originally I had wanted to make the transition to more of a publishing, literature, journalism based field, like junior editor, like assistant type job. And then I realized my current professional background is in largely admin work, and apparently a degree from an esteemed college is not gonna pull my weight at all. So I adjusted my expectations and I was just applying to jobs like the one that I'm currently working, but we're either remote or in New York, because that's where I want to end up long term. Like that's always been a dream of mine, and it's still very very strong goal that I hope to achieve soon. But yeah, basically I had a huge mental breakdown in July from all of the stuff I had been repressing, because I don't do that, like I said. And first time for everything, but I don't recommend it whatsoever. It just makes the fallout so much worse. Like so much so that I literally had like a breakdown in front of my dad, and not that there's any way for anyone to know this, even though 99% of my listeners are my friends. I don't break down in front of my parents. It's just a boundary I have for myself. I don't like giving them a reason to worry about me, but it's also not like they're stupid and have been in the dark. Like I live with them. So yeah, after that, I tried to like start putting benchmarkers in place of like actual attainable things to improve my quality of life. And the podcast was one of them. And so I had a lot of fuel and a lot of steam. And then it started slowing down because, I don't know, I think the reality of how much work it is caught up with me. Sorry, I'm leaning back. My back is hurting. Also, decorated for Christmas, as I already said. My Christmas Village bed sheets. Here, let me angle the camera. There we go. My garland with my squishmallow ornaments. And then I have a mini tree, which I will show you guys later on because it's on my desk. So next week's episode. But, yeah. Basically, everything started catching up with me. And to give more headway into my personal life, I've been applying to admin assistant jobs like out the waz. The reason I was looking for either remote or jobs in New York is because remote job gives me the flexibility to save even more money, to be at home and be able to get other stuff done. Like the big thing that has been killing my soul and spirit is that I don't have time for myself anymore. Like, or free time enough to like have downtime and then also do the things that are important to me, because I drive 10 to 15 minutes to a commuter parking lot, and then I get on the bus, and the bus is an hour and a half to get me to DC, and then it's the same thing on the way back. And yeah, it's been tough. What was I saying? Yeah, it just started catching up with me because I've been applying, and I've counted now. I've applied to over 50 jobs, and I've either gotten ghosted or rejected from all of them. And at first, I was taking things very personally, and then I just kind of gave myself some distance of like, okay, well, me complaining and not applying for jobs is not going to get me a new job. But yeah, the whole reason I was applying for remote jobs is because it gives me the flexibility and I can still move, and I can move on my own time. And also applying to jobs in New York, like it gives me something to propel myself to go there, because as much as I'm someone who like, has these big dreams and wants to take risks, I also, like, the anxious part of my brain, like, I need to have some sense of security or a plan in place. So getting, even if it's just, like, what I'm doing now, but in New York, like, I'm making a massive change for the better in my life and setting myself up for better circumstances. So, yeah, just getting rejected, and I'm doing all of this stuff on my hour and a half journey back. I'm applying to as many jobs as I can on the bus. I'm editing my videos. I'm editing content for the Instagram. I'm coming up with video ideas. I'm trying to knit because that was a hobby that was really important to me that I abandoned when my depression got really bad last year. I set a goal to read 24 books on Goodreads this year, and I'm at 12, and the year's almost done. So, and, like, that's the time I have to, do it. But I also like to disengage and like to, be on my phone, and I do Duolingo every day, and I set a goal that I would run the distance of a half marathon by the end of the year. So it's just like I have all of these side goals and projects, and it's just like no matter how much effort I put into job hunting, and I think the job hunting has really been the big one. Like, I'm putting so much effort. Hello? My computer shut off. I'm putting so much effort into this, and it's yielding no results. Like, I haven't gotten one interview. And there's a part of me that has remained optimistic in the sense of, like, I know when I am supposed to get another job, like, I will get it. But it's just very disheartening, and it doesn't make me want to keep applying. It's tough. And so subsequently, like, that takes a hit on my mental, and then it's like things that interested me before, classic depression symptom, things that interested and excited me before, I just have no interest in. And, like, it's not to say that I don't want to be doing this podcast, but, like, I don't want to be filming episodes when I'm depressed and I'm not putting my all into this, because I want this to be something I'm proud of and not something I look back on and I'm like, wow, I really half-assed that just for the sake of getting content out. But I've been also feeling guilty. It's like this catch-22 of, like, giving myself grace, but then, like, how much grace is too much, to the point that I make myself feel like I'm being lazy and not advocating for myself to get things to change. So, yeah, it's been tumultuous, and I've realized this whole rant has kind of been all over the place, but that's been taking a huge hit. And then it happens every year, but somehow I feel like I'm gonna magically evade it. Seasonal depression is back in business, baby. Daylight savings, and also the timing of daylight savings. And the election results this year couldn't have been worse. Yeah, I get up to leave for work at 6:15. I leave the house by 7, on the bus by 7:20, at work by 8:15. And so I'm getting up that early. My office doesn't have a window outside, so I can't see. I get an hour lunch break, and pretty much every day I'm at the gym because I don't want to have to pay for a gym membership, and my office building offers one, but that would be my time to get fresh air. But then I wouldn't have time to work out. So I have to pick one. And exercise more reliably gives me endorphins, so I do that. And it just makes me feel like I'm doing at least something productive with my life. Which I'm very hard on myself, and everybody tells me that, but I also don't think giving myself grace when I'm depressed is always the best thing for me. But yeah, I honestly, like, as stupid as it sounds, I had the most magical time in New York. Like, that is the first time in my life that I felt like manifestation, like, is a real thing. And it just made, I don't know, it confirmed my calling that I've been feeling to move there. Because I honestly was like, I really hope that when I go for this show, I'm not disappointed and I realize I don't actually want to move here. but that wasn't the case at all. It's just like I don't remember how happy I felt, like, aside from when I'm with certain people, like, that the location doesn't matter, but like the actual place itself, I was just like, I feel like I would be so happy here. And then after the show and after everything, I was just like feeling very inspired of like, I need to figure out how I'm gonna get here, and I need to make it happen soon, because I think it would really turn things around for me. So there was that, and so I had a lot of like optimistic, like, hopefulness for a while. Then I kept getting job rejections, and not to say that I was expecting like immediate growth of the podcast. I understand that I'm in this for the long game, and like my time will come if I stick to it. Like, if I've told myself the minimum I'm allowed to stick to doing this podcast is 1 year, because I actually need to see something through for fucking once, basically. I'm very quick to be like, oh well, it's never gonna happen, so what's the point? Hey, that mentality will literally get you nowhere in life. But anyway, yeah, that was keeping me going for a while. Just the joy and wonderment and honestly, like, giddiness from having been in New York after not being there for so long, and having the same feeling. Like, I just feel like I'm leaving a part of myself behind every time I leave, and every time I'm there, it just feels very meant to be. I don't know how to describe it other than that. So that was fueling me for a while, but then, job rejections and work being work, and, I felt like all the things that I was doing to try to make things change just weren't happening, and I was very frustrated, and so that kind of just put me back in the spot of like, well, how much fucking longer do I have to do this stuff until, like, something's gotta give. Like, something's gotta give. Otherwise, like, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Because I'm running out of steam. And when I run out of steam, I can't do my side projects. And, like, I don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm putting so much energy into just getting by that all the extraordinary things I want to do, like, it's just like, you've got to be joking. You got to be joking. What do you mean? That's not going to happen. Not as long as, like, you have to, like, force yourself to get out of bed every morning and everything like that. So yeah. The fuel dissipated. Then I started doing my Hispanic Heritage Month videos. And then those kind of got monotonous because I don't think they turned out as good as I wanted them to. And I feel like I could have been more succinct as well as more profound and eloquent in what I was saying, and just me being a harsh critic on myself. And then it was just like, I had a lot of things going on. I was going to a lot of live shows. I was trying to balance, like, having somewhat of a social life and exercising and keeping up with all of these other, honest to God, unrealistic goals that I set for myself. Like, you really gotta focus in on a pick few, or you will burn yourself the fuck out, which honestly is happening to me right now, but I'm trying to get back on the horse. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, and then it was like, I went to Seattle and I saw Laura and Kana, which was great. It was a nice break to not be in my head so much. Always makes me sad though, because there's always a time that I have to leave them, but I'm seeing them in 2 weeks. Well, kind of less than that, because I'll see Laura. She's coming here to where I live for Thanksgiving. And then we're all going to New York again for Christmas, because Christmas in New York was always our dream trip. So it gives me something to look forward to. But that's the thing with also, like I said, daylight savings has come. It being dark outside and me having no windows in my office, like, it being dark when I'm coming home, like, the sun has already set at, like, 4:15, where the sun is starting to set at 4:15, and then I'm on a bus and it's pitch black when I get home. It makes me want to cry, if I can be completely honest. Like, I don't want to do anything when it's dark outside. So there's that. Then the election results. I've been having a really hard time with that, as have many. And if I think about it too much, I will cry because it is really disappointing, just what this country has turned into. And I'm really quite fearful and dreading the next 4 years. I just really don't think there's a lot of good that can come from it for a lot of people, to include myself, and to include a lot of people I love, and to include communities and people that I care about. So that all just like coming together all at the same time. It just like, and then I got into these spirals of just like, well, you know, if he who shall not be named can get back into office and fuck up the country even more than already is, like, what hope do I have at